welcome to Truth Sentinel, watching over the truth in the news. Today's date is April the 10th, 2014. Welcome to any new listeners to Truth Sentinel. Thanks to existing ones. Truth Sentinel is on the move this week. We came through the Netherlands from the UK. We went through Turkey, through Istanbul, Ankara. Now we're in Odessa, Ukraine to do some reporting on the ground. At the moment everything seems fairly normal here. It's pretty much how I remember it. People are still going to cafes, going to bars. I went for a walk along the sea the other day by the beach, and everything seemed fairly normal. I did hear a couple of military jets go over this morning. Not sure what that was about. That could be anything. And this evening in Odessa there was some kind of celebration about some kind of past military occurrence. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but it basically involved loads and loads of fireworks and bangs, and at one stage it was so loud and they didn't sound like fireworks anymore. I actually thought that Putin had used this as an opportunity to attack, because it did sound extremely loud, but thankfully it stopped at the moment. But if you do hear any bangs later, that's what it's about basically. There's some kind of commemoration going on this evening in Odessa. Anyway, today's news. In Ukraine, Russian troops are still on the border, and they've been given there's also Russian pro-activists that have been given a 48-hour ultimatum by Arsen Avakov. Basically, they need to get out of the buildings they've occupied or face force. That was about 24 hours ago, so maybe that military jet was just a practice run, and then maybe in 24 hours we're going to see something happen. It remains to be seen anyway. Putin's also warned Europe of gas shortages over the Ukraine situation, because Ukraine hasn't paid their debts at the moment, so he's basically hinting that the EU should give them money so they can pay the gas bill. Tensions have been high basically since the government buildings in the eastern cities of Lugansk, Donetsk and Kharkiv were taken over on Sunday. Other news: Oscar Pistorius' trial continues, with Oscar being cross-examined a bit more thoroughly by the prosecution. I still don't quite understand his version of events. I think I would check if my girlfriend was in the toilet before I'd started shooting through the door. It doesn't make sense, his story at the moment. We're not going to cover it too much because it's not really a conspiracy, but you know, we comment on all the news anyway. But it just seems strange. He said that he's actually saying now that he turned round to her and said, call the police. But if you turn around somewhere, you just check whether you're talking to someone. You'd probably wait for a response. It all sounds very dubious to me. What do you think about that anyway? The search for the MH370 continues, and now, rather than the debris which they seem to have given up on looking for, despite these previous mentions of 25-meter long objects, it's now focusing on the jet signal, saying, yeah, we think we heard something, oh, we think we've heard something else. It really does seem extremely strange to me that for the last few weeks there's pretty much been nothing found, and no more news has come out. It's all speculation, and we've obviously done a bit of that ourselves, but it's a very peculiar case, I think, and it remains to see what's going to happen about it. Last week we talked to you about Diego Garcia. That's just one of the many theories as to what happened to that plane. Who knows? But I think at this stage I would say I don't buy the story. There's some kind of cover-up, or there's something going on. What do you think about that anyway? Prince George is starting his new life under the sanitised royal microscope of the press, in the same week that Prince Andrew was linked with sex scandals involving young girls. The Daily Mail said they're in no way suggesting he's involved, despite the girl in question saying yes, he knew what was going on for sure. It's the usual whitewash of anything involving royals. They couldn't possibly do anything wrong, and they're completely protected by the press. They could literally get away with murder, and when I say literally, I think they could, because I don't think the Queen could be prosecuted for any crime. Check that out if you don't believe me. I don't think she's actually. I think she may be immune to prosecution. Princess Anne was saying this week. She said that it's much kinder because there's a possible badger cull coming on. There seems to be so many culls mentioned in the news lately. I'm not sure what that's about. But anyway, she's saying it's much kinder to gas badgers than to shoot them. She's such a softie, really. Yeah, she's saying it's much kinder. Probably a view shared by her Nazi father, actually, Prince Philip, who would love to exterminate most of the human race, which is a plague on the earth, in his words. As the balance of power in Asia swings towards China, Japan has started building one of the most modern and powerful naval forces in the world. I mean, after the World War II, the US imposed a settlement on Japan, basically saying that it couldn't build a very big army anymore. But it looks like it's ignoring that. I guess in some ways you can't blame them with what's going on in the world, basically. Maria Miller, a British MP, quits an expenses scandal. Yet another MP using taxpayers' money to fund her lifestyle. I mean, basically, our MPs in the UK have so many things they can claim on expenses that they don't have to actually spend any money. They can claim for taxis, for trains, homes, second homes, food, entertainments. It's no wonder they're out of touch with normal people, really, because if we could claim all that, then we'd have no worries either. And so they shouldn't basically be making laws when they're not living the same lifestyle. They don't understand how normal people are living. I read on the BBC website today that the human species may split into two, basically. An evolutionary theorist, Oliver Curry, from the London School of Economics, said that he thinks that there's going to be two types of humans. There's going to be the upper class, who will be educated, good-looking, tall, slim, creative and intelligent, of course, and then there's going to be an underclass of humans who will be dim-witted, ugly, squat, goblin-like creatures. These are his words. I think I've seen some of those on the London Underground. If you go out on the London Underground about 11:30, you'll see some of those kind of people. Anyway, apparently this isn't going to happen until the year 3000, so we've got some time yet anyway before we have to worry too much. Tragically, there was also the mysterious death of Peaches Geldof, yet another death of someone so young connected to the world of music, film or media, and her death at the moment is still unexplained. There was a mass stabbing at a US high school. Up to 20 students were hurt in a stabbing at a school near the US city of Pittsburgh, and a suspect thought to be a student is in custody. It's quite strange that usually when you hear of sort of mass attempted murders in the US, it's usually guns. Quite strange that it was a knife, because you would have thought that they would have used a gun if they seriously wanted to commit harm. But anyway, a lot of people were seriously injured in this attack. More to come out about that, I would imagine, in the coming week. On the BBC website, there's been a lot of talk about the public being urged to reset all their passwords by tech firms such as Yahoo because of some kind of heartbleed bug, security bug, basically causing havoc online, meaning criminals could access passwords for a lot of different types of websites. And then there was another article on the BBC basically saying that maybe it's time to get rid of passwords and that we should use these edible electronic capsules instead. You can't help wondering whether the media is just totally trying to manipulate people. I mean, we already know, as I've said before, that a lot of our prime ministers and MPs are good friends with the media, so it's it wouldn't be completely unlikely that they have agendas that they're trying to get across in the media. Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini has backed talks with world powers, basically talking about their nuclear program, but he's warned that they're not intending to give up their nuclear program at all. And it is hypocritical of Western governments to say other countries can't have them. It's okay for us to have them, but you can't have them. I mean, but surely it's better to lead by example. Everyone should get rid of them. The US should get rid of their nuclear weapons. The UK should get rid of their nuclear weapons. Then they can turn around to other countries and say, yeah, you shouldn't have them either. And that would be fair enough. In my opinion, nuclear weapons should be illegal. I mean, we don't need them, basically. Look what they do. Do we want to do that to anyone? I mean, I told you about when I visited the Hiroshima Museum in Japan, and I met a survivor from the Hiroshima bombing all those years ago, and she was still shaking with fear, just trying to describe what happened. And the reason she was putting herself through that was because she wanted to try to get across that it should never happen again, and I think she's right. And I think as part of our education program in schools, we should make sure that children have to visit Hiroshima and Auschwitz and all the things that represent the mistakes of the past, and make sure they don't happen again, because I think they will happen again, because nobody's doing anything to stop it. So in last episode we did talk about Malaysia Flight 370 and Diego Garcia. We weren't saying necessarily the plane was there, we just thought it'd be interesting to get a bit more background detail on Diego Garcia, and we discovered that Diego Garcia had allegations that it was turning into a kind of secret Guantanamo Bay style base, that people were outsourcing torture to an interrogation to that island. And basically at some point we want to get back in contact with Anthony and see what he's looking at this week. I did have a chance to say a quick hello to him when I passed through Ankara the other day, so let's just listen to that quick conversation I had with Anthony when I was in Ankara. Okay, I'm here in Ankara, Turkey, doing some interviews with people on the ground, not only in Turkey. There probably won't be much opportunity to speak to too many in Turkey because I'm off to Odessa, Ukraine, in a couple of hours. But I'm here with one of our academic researchers, our resident academic researcher, Anthony. So I thought I'd say take the opportunity to say hello and find out what sort of things he might be researching at the moment for upcoming programs. Hello, Anthony.
Hi, welcome to Ankara.
Thank you very much, and what a nice place it is.
Yeah, nice little quiet area of town.
Do you live in this area, or do you live nearby? What can you tell us about the area you live in?
I live on campus at Bill Kent University, which is mostly known for engineering and social sciences, and it's a little way out of town. So yeah, this is not my backyard. And do you usually go into town? You've talked to us before about some of the protests going on. Have you actually come across them or stumbled into them while you've been walking about town? I've been near a few. I haven't been in any. It's the kind of thing that you can run into from time to time, and there are parts of town where it's just a regular occurrence, and you just know, okay, don't go there at night if you don't want to taste the tear gas, you know. Yeah, nobody likes the taste of tear gas, as far as I know. So, what kind of things are you researching at the moment for Truth Sentinel? Well, I have a long-standing interest in experimental music that kind of pushes the frontiers, I suppose you could say, of sound and what's possible to do with sound. And some decades ago, some of these musicians / researchers hit upon a way of producing sound outside of audible frequencies, and they found that these sounds could have significant physical effects. Now this has over time caught on and become increasingly weaponized, and we've seen many examples of it in the past, say, 5 years in America and Japan. So I'm just going to be looking into the state of sonic weaponry at the moment and the possible future of that. The scariest example that I know of at the moment is Japanese whaling companies using this against protesters. So they'll They will immobilize the crew of vessels that are captained by protest organizations. They'll immobilize them using sound and then destroy those vessels. But it's also being used extensively in the US by law enforcement. So I'll just have a look into that over the coming week, and I'll let you know what I find out. I'm hoping to talk to at least one or two of the musicians who pioneered the field and find out what they think about it as well.
Okay, sounds interesting. Yeah, I heard in New York they've been using some kind of sonic cannon, and in Chicago too. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, the system is called LRAD, Long Range Audio Device, and it's been used, for example, in New York during the Occupy protests there. It was used to disperse the crowd, but the long-term effects on the people who were involved in that incident are not yet known. It's thought that ultimately those people could suffer hearing damage and other inner ear problems.
Okay. Another thing I noticed when I was in whilst I've been in Turkey, I've only been here a short time, but whenever I've tried to go on YouTube, everything seems to be blocked. Can you tell me why is YouTube blocked in Turkey at the moment?
Well, the specific thing which set that off was a conversation which was leaked regarding what seems to be a planned invasion of Syria. Not the whole country, but certain territories within Syria that, according to the participants of this conversation, these were high-level politicians, high-level members of the ruling government, according to these people, they're considering annexation. Now this conversation was leaked on YouTube, and the government's response was to shut YouTube down, though they have threatened to do that before for different reasons connected to political activism and so on. So I think this has been the Turkish government versus YouTube has been going on for a little while.
Yeah, it seems strange to me that they would shut down, say, YouTube, when people can just use other methods, like other channels, like, you know, Google, Facebook, or any other kind of video sharing channels. So it just seems strange to me.
Yeah, I think it's quite short-sighted, and other governments have been guilty of this too. You see in the response of these governments a lack of understanding of new media. So I don't think that the Turkish government's shutting down of YouTube is going to either win them any friends or achieve the ends that they're hoping it will achieve. But we'll see what happens in the coming months.
Have any of your students mentioned this at the university where you are, or is YouTube available at your university?
It is actually available at my university, and the politics of Turkey are very unusual in that way, that a university, an established one, like mine, can, I suppose, with the right connections, find a way around these laws, such that our students can come to university and access sites that aren't accessible elsewhere in Turkey, like Twitter and YouTube. Okay, thank you. Thanks for talking to us today. We may hear more from you later in this episode, or we may hear from you in an upcoming episode. Okay, thanks very much, and have fun in Ukraine. Say hi to Odessa for me. Will do, thank you. Okay, I wanted to talk a little bit about government assassins, because someone mentioned that on the comments section of Truth Sentinel. So do they exist? Well, I told you about the government assassin I met when I was in Georgia, who broke down crying, and I really believe he was telling the truth, because he wasn't the kind of guy to cry at all, and he was basically really regretted what he'd done. But anyway, I did a little bit of research on government assassins, and we know that there's snipers who serve in the army or in the Marines, certain members of the special forces who may be trained in combat techniques. But how about actual assassins who have to go out and kill important people or politicians or people like that? Apparently there were CIA operatives with top-level security clearances
that were trained as snipers or martial arts experts, and basically a lot of their activities were generally kept secret and might not have even been recorded at all, especially in the post 9/11 era. Apparently President Bush gave the CIA permission to create an assassination unit, and part of their job was to find and kill Al-Qaeda operatives, and that was apparently run by the private security firm Blackwater. They at least helped run it anyway. And Bush wasn't completely involved in the decision-making cycle, so that he could shield himself if anything went wrong, or if any of it was found to be illegal. It allegedly began in 2001, and basically some information has come to light because of the testimony of a former US Navy SEAL who gave some accounts of what he had to do. And Dick Cheney was apparently involved as well when he was Secretary of Defense for Bush from 1989 to 1993. But as well as the more recent stuff, I mean, it could go back as far as the 60s and include the assassination of JFK, depending on what you're prepared to believe. And you know, how far do these assassinations go? Do they just involve political leaders, or do they involve conspiracy theorists, for example? I mean, there have been cases of people who try to delve deeper into some conspiracy stories, and then you know, you might hear them on somewhere like Coast to Coast, and a couple of weeks later they're found dead with and I'm thinking of one case where the entire family was dead, including the dog. Daughters as well, and it was extremely unlikely this guy would do it to himself. So there's who's actually committing those murders. I mean, let's look at the definition of the word assassinate. It means murder an important person for political or religious reasons. But I think the actual definition of an assassination has changed over the years and can mean all kinds of things. Basically, originally the original assassins derived their name from the Arabic hashishim, or eaters of hashish, referring to the marijuana they consumed apparently for ritual purposes. You would have thought that if they were smoking marijuana, they would have they wouldn't have had the motivation to go out and kill people, but apparently not. They did. They waged an international war of terrorism against anyone that opposed them, but they eventually turned on each other, a bit like in a Tarantino movie, I guess. In 12,050 AD, the conquering Mongols were led by Mangu Khan, and they actually almost annihilated the assassins. Some of them survived though, and one group were led by an imam called Aga Khan, who I'm sure you may have heard of, or at least you've heard of one of them, because there seems to be quite a few of the Aga Khans. Moved from Iran to India in 1840. His followers, who were supposed to have numbered in the millions, are still found in Syria, Iran, and Central and South Asia. The largest groups being in India and Pakistan, apparently known as the Khojas there. It does seem like everything goes around full circle, and if you start to investigate and research topics, you find that you're dealing with areas that are still involved in the news currently, which are predominantly in the news, places like Syria. Aga Khan II came to be one of the founders of the Muslim League, which was sponsored by the British in 1858. The 48th Imam, Sir Sultan Muhammad Shah Aga Khan III, was very close to the British royal family. So this is what I mean. You start to investigate things and you realise that all the same people are involved. The 49th Imam, Prince Karim Aga Khan IV, was given the British title His Highness by Queen Elizabeth II in 1957. So here she's being mentioned as well, and continues to this day. And apparently he's closely allied to the Illuminati, who I'm sure you've all heard of. We hear a lot about the Illuminati, but I wonder, who are we talking about? Are we talking about a particular secret society called the Illuminati? Are we a bit like Al Qaeda, talking about certain groups or secret societies that have affiliations or have connections to in their roots to the Illuminati? Anyway, the Illuminati means one who is illuminated, or an enlightened one. The Illuminati was founded by Adam, and sorry for my pronunciation, but it looks like Weishaupt, 1748 to 1830. That's when Adam was alive. He died in 1830. It was very popular at first, the Illuminati, and it had about 2,000 members throughout Germany, France, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Poland, Hungary and Italy. And basically, it's said that the Napoleonic Wars were started by the Illuminati, so that the Illuminati actually start wars. Now, if the Illuminati still do exist, then maybe they control wars now. And I do believe that a lot of the wars that we see happening or about to happen around us are controlled by someone. They're not just happening according to the things that we see in the news. They're happening because someone's planned them. That's my opinion. What do you think about that? Do you think these wars are happening because of the events we see in the news, or do you think they're being planned? An interesting thing I discovered was that the Russian government have always been seen as an adversary to the Illuminati agenda, and perhaps still do to this day. That's why we've got the Russians on one side and Europe and the US on another. They've always seemed to have been adversary to the Illuminati. I'm sure we'll be talking about the Illuminati more in detail at some point on Truth Sentinel, but I thought I'd just sort of basically investigate topics a little by little, so find out a bit more each time. So we'll come back to the Illuminati anymore, and we may we're basically on Truth Sentinel. We'll get experts in, but we'll also just interview and speak to normal members of the public, because I really want to hear from normal people as well. And when I'm in Ukraine over the coming weeks, I will try and interview some people. Obviously, there'll be the language barrier, so I can only really speak to people who speak very good English, although I can still speak to people who speak Russian or Ukrainian and get an idea of what they believe by using translators, etc. I do speak a little Russian and Ukrainian, but certainly not to have enough to have a good conversation. This week I watched a documentary, The Century of the Self, which I think I may have seen before, but maybe not watched properly. So thanks to Anthony for recommending that again. I didn't watch all of it again. It's quite a long, I think it was about 3 hours long, but I did see the first hour. It's all about the psychology of the masses and how they're controlled through advertising, and how they're controlled in general. And I think we're going to have a chat now with Anthony about the research he's been doing. I know he's looking at crowd control and general control of people using sonic weapons and things like that, but I'm not sure he's going to be talking about that today. We'll find out and have a chat with him. So let's go over to Anthony. So hello, Anthony.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Just had some technical problems, but we'll hopefully sort that out by next episode. How about yourself?
Yeah, let's put this on the gag reel at the end of the show.
Yeah, exactly. And what have you been looking at this week for us? I know that this is a bit off the cuff today because of the problems we've been having, but can you go over some of the stuff you've been looking at?
Sure, yeah. It hasn't been difficult to find things to talk about this week, especially here in Turkey. It's been very interesting, and I suspect maybe the shape of things to come, because the uncomfortable relationship between the Turkish government and the social media has continued, and I guess you could say it's intensified.
Right, yeah. Can you tell us a bit about why they banned YouTube in Turkey?
Sure, yeah. There's been a whole range of things leading up to this, but the trigger was a conversation between 4 high-level ministers in the Turkish government, including the foreign minister. They were talking about circumstances under which Turkey might invade Syria. And the conversation included a suggestion of a false flag operation, finding a pretext to enter Syria. And this conversation then was leaked. It was recorded, leaked, and uploaded onto YouTube. That was on the 27th of March, and on that same day, the government just decided to block YouTube entirely.
And do you know why would Turkey want to go to war with Syria?
Well, relations between the two have really deteriorated in the last couple of years. I mean, up until the point where Assad got caught out using chemical weapons, the two countries were fairly friendly with each other, but suddenly Turkey started condemning the Syrian regime. They actually helped to fund and set up an army, a rebel army, to fight the Syrian army. And there have been border skirmishes and all kinds of stuff. There's also a historical reason. There's a piece of territory inside Syria which contains a tomb of a guy called Süleyman Shah. He was the grandfather of Osman I, who founded the Ottoman Empire. And the Turks have always considered that to be Turkish territory, even though it's not inside their borders. In fact, they managed to get France to sign a document to that effect in 1921. But yeah, so there have been some threats against that particular patch of territory where Turkey has a permanent military presence, and that has just really fanned the fire. Things have seemed to spin out of control here a little bit lately. The government, as I said, were fighting, or at least agitating, against the regime in Syria, but it's actually anti-government people inside Syria now who are threatening to blow up this tomb. And so, I don't know, Turkey seems to be losing its allies or losing its influence inside the country. And they're, I think, getting a little bit desperate. They don't quite know what to do. The government doesn't quite know what to do about this unfolding situation. So, this current government, whenever it faces a situation that it doesn't fully understand, its reaction is a huge crackdown. And that's what seems to be occurring now.
And has there been any more protests on the street by students or anything in the last few weeks?
There have been isolated incidents. They've had to bring out the water cannon and so on a few times, but at the moment it's fairly quiet. As I think I mentioned last week, the mood is one of despondency more than anger at the moment.
And talking of water cannons, you were going to come on soon, maybe a next episode or an upcoming episode, and talk about sound cannons or some kind of sound weaponry. Is that right?
Yeah, this is really a fascinating topic. It goes right back to the 60s and 70s when electronic music was starting to come into its own, and there were various people experimenting with the limits to which you could take sound. And what some of these people discovered is that if you manipulated sound in certain ways, it would actually go outside of the audible range, because our ears have a very limited range. There are plenty of animals on the earth that can hear stuff that we can't hear. So it started to manipulate sound that was outside the normal range of human hearing, that it could have quite strong physiological effects. Now, unfortunately, as with a lot of things, governments and military organizations have gotten hold of this information, and the result is something called the LRAD and MRAD. So LRAD is long-range audio device, MRAD medium-range audio device. Excuse me. And basically, it's a crowd control tool, but the long-term effects on people are unknown. You basically point this, it's a handheld device, you point it at a crowd, and it sends a sonic burst at them, which results in them being in intense pain. So I'm going to have a look a little bit at this, the basis of this. I'm lucky enough to know somebody who actually managed to buy one on eBay in Australia.
You can buy anything on eBay these days, can't you?
You can literally buy a non-lethal police sound device
on eBay in Australia. So we're going to, I hope, talk to that person and maybe even get a product demonstration. Who knows?
That'd be cool. Okay, thanks. Well, thanks for at short notice for coming on today. We're probably going to leave it there now. Thanks again, and we hope to speak to you next episode. Okay.
No problem, no problem. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a lot then. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Topics coming up in future episodes of Truth Sentinel will include things like the global elite, population control, 9/11, the Illuminati, the Mothman, genetic engineering, the coming apocalypse, World War III. We'll look at the paranormal also. We'll look at mysteries and conspiracies. If you've got anything or any topics that fit into that remit, then please let us know in the comments section in the under the YouTube videos, or you can go to Facebook, Scott Sentinel, or you can email us by clicking on YouTube, and if you click on the About section, there's a bit there where you can click on it and email us. Also remember, we're looking for a reviewer to review other shows like Jesse Ventura, Lip TV, David Icke, Alex Jones, John B. Wells. Recently I've had less time to actually listen to those because I've been on the move travelling. So it'd be nice to keep in touch with what they're talking about as well, and also just to get reviews of any new people that are cropping up, because there's always new people cropping up in the independent media, and that's a really good thing at the moment. Okay, let's just move on to another one I just wanted to mention quickly was Hagman and Hagman. I try and listen to them sometimes. The last one I listened to, the guy was a little bit obsessed with numbers and symbolism. They had a guest on. Sounded a bit paranoid, and I switched off a bit, to be honest. I try to keep an open mind to everything, but if you see patterns of numbers in everything, I think you could go slightly mad. I wasn't blown away by the details anyway that he was talking about. Hagman and Hagman tend to have they have quite a religious slant, so if you don't like that kind of stuff, it's probably not for you. I was raised in a fairly religious family, so I'm fairly comfortable with it. I mentioned on the last episode that we're going to have maybe a weather section, sports section, and an economic market section. Well, I've had a lot of technical problems today, so I'm going to have to. Today's episode's going to be a bit more rambly, really, but we'll hopefully go back to a decent sort of more organised format after we've got over these technical problems. Let me just talk a little bit about HAARP, just an introductory chat about HAARP. Basically, what does HAARP stand for? Let's have a look at that. It stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, which is part of the US military defense program, and it's generated quite a lot of controversy over the last decade or so, because some people say it's being used for weather modification, and some people say it's got secret electromagnetic warfare capabilities as well. But people are saying that it could possibly have caused earthquakes, tsunami, or disrupted global communication systems. There's a lot of secrecy around HAARP, allegedly for reasons of national security, although most of the time when those reasons are given, it's not actually true. It's because they're trying to hide something that people aren't going to like. I mean, according to the HAARP website, it's a scientific endeavour aimed at studying the properties and behaviour of their ionosphere, which makes you wonder, well, why does it have to be secret then? The ionosphere is a delicate upper layer of our atmosphere, and with it being so delicate, do we really want people playing around with it, shooting electromagnetic beams up there without us knowing why or having any say in the matter? I mean, they're basically firing pulse-directed energy beams in order to temporarily excite a limited area of the ionosphere. And, you know, if you start tampering around with nature like that, then you don't know what kind of results there's going to be. At least they should be held accountable for these actions, and we should know what they're doing. And here's an excerpt from the History Channel documentary HAARP Weather Modification, the Military's Mystery Machine. Please relax, listen to this excerpt, and then we'll wind down today's episode.
It's no coincidence that the United States began building its own mysterious array of antennas in February 1992. They are located in Gakona, Alaska. The project is called HAARP.
HAARP is the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Project, originally a joint effort of the Air Force and Navy in cooperation with a number of academic institutions.
It is today the world's largest radio broadcasting station, but it's not designed to broadcast for human ears. It uses unique patented ability to focus the energy coming out of the antenna field and injects that energy into a spot at the very top of the atmosphere in a region called the ionosphere.
HAARP is comprised of 180 antennas, approximately 72 feet tall, linked together to function as one giant steerable antenna. Steerable because it can aim millions of watts of ELF waves into one tiny patch of the atmosphere.
The amount of energy we're talking about here is 3.6 million watts. To give you an idea of what that is, the largest legal AM radio station in North America is 50,000 watts. HAARP is 72,000 50,000 watt radio stations injecting their entire output into a spot that's about 12 miles across by about 2.5 miles deep by about 90 miles up.
This is where HAARP is pointing. It's an area located roughly 300 miles from Anchorage. The U.S. military says HAARP is merely being used to study the physical and electrical properties and behavior of the ionosphere for both civilian and defense purposes. But another theory has surfaced. The intense energy being beamed into the sky by HAARP is actually heating up the atmosphere, causing weather changes.
HAARP is being used for weather modification. The military's own record proves it. They've admitted it within their own documents, and yet they still deny it to the public.
Dr. Brooks Agnew has researched ELF wave technology for the past 30 years and is convinced HAARP's effect on the ionosphere does alter the weather.
HAARP couldn't affect the jet stream directly, but indirectly it could, because if you push the ionosphere out into space, then the stratosphere just under the ionosphere has to move to fill in that gap. When it moves, it could pull the jet stream with it, thus rerouting it hundreds of miles, changing the way water moves through our atmosphere.
Dr. Agnew has devised a demonstration to show how HAARP could manipulate the atmosphere.
So what we've done is we've got a cloud generator up here. It's an ultrasonic nebulizer. It's going to create real water particles, just like you would find in a cloud. What we're seeing now is we're actually filling this chamber with microscopic water particles. You can see that it's almost completely filled with water vapor. It's beginning to condense a little bit on the sides, just so that you can see the detail. We've got a nice dense fog, just like you were sitting inside a cloud at 50,000 feet.
At the bottom of the cloud chamber, Dr. Agnew has constructed an ELF wave transmitter, a miniature version of HAARP.
We're only using 100 watts. It's perfectly safe.
When Dr. Agnew turns on the ELF wave transmitter and begins shooting ELF waves into the simulated cloud, the cloud begins to move up to the top of the chamber, taking the moisture with it.
If you get down low enough, you can actually see a clear layer above the antenna. It is actually pushing these water particles up, and that's exactly how HAARP works. What we've done is we've not only pushed the cloud off of the HAARP antenna, but as you can see, our cloud is almost completely gone inside. HAARP does exactly the same thing. It ionizes the particles, pushes them out into space.
HAARP is one of several ELF wave transmitters located all over the globe. The United States owns and operates 3 of them, one in Gakona, Alaska, another in Fairbanks, Alaska, and one in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Russia has one in Vasilursky near Nizhny Novgorod, and the European Union has one near Tromsø in Norway. Working in tandem, these transmitters could potentially alter the weather anywhere in the world, changing the jet stream's course entirely, triggering massive rainstorms or droughts. Even hurricane steering would be possible by heating up the atmosphere and building up high-pressure domes that could deflect or change the course of hurricanes. The U.S. government is firm in its position that HAARP is just an atmospheric research facility. But is it more than coincidence that since going online, some experts have reported strange weather anomalies, including massive floods, hurricanes, and earthquakes? HAARP went online in 1994, and construction continued until 2007. There are reportedly a total of 5 known ionospheric heaters, including HAARP, in the world today. There are possibly 20 other ionospheric heaters in existence all over the world. There is no conclusive proof that any of them are being used as weather weapons, though they do have the ability to manipulate the ionosphere. And that brings us to something else. December 2001. Scientists at NASA's Ames Research Center in Palo Alto, California, make a discovery. In studying more than 100 earthquakes with magnitudes of 5.0 or greater, they find that almost all of them are preceded by electrical disturbances in the ionosphere. Could there be a connection to HAARP or a facility like it?
To say that HAARP can artificially excite the ionosphere in such a way to cause an earthquake, well, it alarms me.
Dr. Agnew experienced the power of ELF waves firsthand back in the 1980s. He was hired by an energy company to locate oil and gas using the same kind of ELF waves at much lower frequencies to carry out his search. It's a process called earth tomography.
Anyway, let's move on. We're going to be coming to a close soon. Just to let you know that we're always on the lookout for sponsors, for advertisers. Basically people who want to advertise on here. If it's something related to what we're talking about or any of the topics in any way, then we may consider advertisements. But really, we're not just going to have advertisements about soap powder or anything like that, so don't worry. I think it's going to be a long time before we have adverts on here anyway. Basically, it's probably time now to say thanks again for listening, for the positive comments you've left in the comments section of YouTube. And I hope that we can all meet again in a week's time, and that I'll have some information for you on the ground from Ukraine. Okay, thanks again. Bye.